want to call the Griffin-Spalding County Board of Education work session to order. We just remind everybody to either silence your electronic devices or turn them off, whichever is your preference. And we're going to call the meeting to order, and we ask that you all stand at this time for a word of prayer and our pledge allegiance. And I'll take the point of privilege to just do our prayer, since we haven't asked anyone, and I don't think we have anyone on the schedule to do so. But our hearts are kind of heavy hearing about Coach Bart Pinckney passing. We want to remember him in our prayer. And I just got off the phone talking to our previous superintendent, Dr. Jesse Bradley, and he said he didn't mind me sharing, but he's been diagnosed with esophageal cancer. They caught it, soon enough where it should be curable through surgery and treatment. And I told him that we would lift him up in prayer as well. So as we bow our heads and pray, let us remember those two and remember their family, because we don't go through things alone. Our family go through it with us as well. So let us pray. Lord God in heaven, we just thank you once more and again for allowing us to be here, for you gracing us with another day. Father God, we thank you and we ask for forgiveness for any sins or transgressions that we've committed against thee. Lord God, we lift up the Pinckney family right now in the death of their beloved husband and father. And also, Lord God, we lift up Dr. Jesse Bradley in his time of need. And Father God, we pray for our system, Lord God. We pray for everyone, from our students to our staff, to everyone that makes up the Griffin-Spalding County school system. But we not only pray for our school system, Lord God, we pray for our city. Then, Lord God, we pray for our leaders in our local government. We pray for our state leaders, and also we lift up our national leaders in our nation. But Father God, we need you right now more than we ever have. And we ask, Lord God, that you just grace us with your blessing and your favor. And it's in Jesus' name that we do pray and give all thanks. Let every heart say amen.
Amen.
Let us pray. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Right now, the agenda as presented. Got a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, show by raising your hand on your card. All right, 4-0. And let the record show that Miss Barbara Jo Cook, she's tied up with work-related issues, and she would not be in attendance today, and she sends her regrets and regards. First up, consent item, Georgia Fund 1 signatory authorization resolution. Who's going to take that one? That's Mr. Byron.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
This is just a formality. We did this same procedure when I came on board to remove Ryan and put me on. So this is to put Mr. Keith L. Simmons on and remove James D. Smith. I think is what the memo is written up. This is the only one of our bank account structures. We've got some at First National, we got some at Wells Fargo, and then we've got these with the state. These are the only ones that require board action to do that, and we have to actually mail the originals, and we're going to have them notarized after you all sign them. So that's all that's about, formality.
Is my name on that one too, Mr. Jones? I've been signing papers all day.
Zachary B. Holmes.
Make sure you spell it right now.
We got it.
Okay. All right.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Somebody got my back, brother. Presentation charter petition update, Ms. Sarah Jones.
Did we vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for
That's
keeping me
what
straight.
money does to him. It comes money.
What did you say, Miss?
That's what money does to you, either money or snacks. You just kind of go, whoop.
Money and snack, that's right. Can we get a motion? Okay, that's right. All right, all in favor, raise your hand. 4-0. Thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Jones, go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm happy to see all of you for a second time today.
Yes, ma'am.
I am before you this afternoon to discuss a charter school petition that has been submitted to the Board of Education. Just a little background information. Back in September, I received, Patrick Jackson came to our district office and left a note for me to return his call. We spoke on the phone. He shared that they are interested in opening a charter school within our district, and we set up a meeting to discuss that in September. From there, it was shared that it would be a startup. We talked about what the state board rule is, what the process is. At that time, I think things were still in the planning phase for them in regards to whether they would request using a building of Griffin-Spalding or having a separate building. So I know it was in early phases. We ended up speaking on the phone a couple of times after that, shared that the letter of intent of how they wanted to move forward would need to be submitted to the board. And from there, we would need to have the charter application petition to be submitted. So just a bit of background information. And I know some of this had, I think Mr. Doss had been coming. I'm not sure if it went to the full board or you shared it at that time, but I know it had come to the board chair and then the superintendent.
Until the letter of intent was actually submitted by the end of the year, there was nothing to take to them.
Okay, thank you. So what I have been in the process of doing is ensuring that the state board rule and the processes that are required for startup charter schools, that we are in alignment with all of that information. I've been working with Alan Mueller at Georgia DOE, and of course scouring their website in regards to support for individual charter schools and information for charter systems. So just a bit of that background information. I went ahead and put a notebook together for you, knowing that we would, I'm sure, be revisiting and wanted to have it in a one-stop shop for you. What has been attached in Assembly is everything I'm going to go over in this notebook, to the exclusion of 3 documents. There are 2 documents in the back that are draft internal documents of just where I've tried to go in and put timelines to ensure we're meeting a mark of our requirement. And then also where we have involved cabinet and directors in feedback on the actual petition that was submitted, that we are still getting that feedback for. And then there was a document also that I placed on in your area today separately, because I just received that from Dr. Mueller today. So I'll be going over those documents. I just wanted you to know everything in Assembly is what is in your notebook, to the exclusion of the last 2 documents and then the one I laid down in your area when I came in. So in the notebook, if I may, I went ahead and did a table of contents for you, so you would have the letter of intent that they submitted, also the actual charter school petition, and they have named the school the Griffin Success Academy. In addition, the next piece I put in here was the actual template for the application on Georgia DOE's website. The next section are the FAQs, which are very informational, so I wanted to put those in there for you. There's a general FAQ, There's an FAQ for new petitioners, Mr. McNair, Mr. Jackson, the Griffin Success Academy, which is also quite informational, so I included that for you. And then an FAQ for parents and community members as well. Then there is a petition process state board ruling I provided for you. Also charter school and charter system definitions. The next one is the charter school synopsis of the state board rule amendments. Also, I found helpful a December of 2020, that's the last PowerPoint update that was done by Georgia DOE, so I've included that in there for you as well. I also wanted to include the gifted education state board rule requirements for charter schools. And then the last two documents you see on the table of contents, again, are GSCS. They are information pieces that I have put together in just trying to make sure we're hitting timeline marks and feedback. So if I may, just stop there. Did you have any questions about the contents that was provided for you?
No, but I will say it's very helpful.
Okay, thank you. And then this document, there is a document I laid down on your table area about evaluating a written petition that was also shared by Alan Mueller, and we'll go over that as well. But what I want to do is just give a brief synopsis of the actual petition. So what they're requesting for Griffin Success Academy is a middle school opportunity that begins with 5th grade. Over a 5-year process, they want to have a phase-in up to 8th grade, and with a maximum of 126 students. So from my early conversation with Mr. Jackson, where he was asking is there a possibility of a school, a building that could be used, or do they need to go and look at something different? Within the charter, they talked a good deal about working with a real estate agent to find a place for this to be in a certain zoned area. So that information is in there. So it sounds as if on the petition they've abandoned the thought of requesting to use one of our facilities. So with the information that they're providing with the middle school charter, there's also a piece of wanting to provide a leadership edge for students within this opportunity. As you read the charter is approximately 40 pages, and they are wanting, while we would be the authorizing agent, the local board of education, they are wanting to have a separate board for the charter, an 11-person board that has administrative and other staffing roles within the school. They will handle their finances with a finance representative that would not, as they put in the petition, it would not require Griffin-Spalding approval. With that, it would be students within our zone, which does impact FTE, it does impact federal dollars, it impacts gifted ELL and special education students in regards to service and a combined service model, which is what they put in there. There was a good bit of information about needing to partner with Griffin-Spalding in regards to special needs students and services and contracting with either our people or some additional people with psychologists, social workers, special ed representatives, OT. Many of those things were put in there under the area of contracting. What I can't answer for you, because there's not any information in the charter petition, is anything about a budget, anything about funding, And the reason I put the Georgia DOE template in here for you is unless a school system has their own created template for a charter petition that the local Board of Education has approved, any charter petitioner with a conversion or a startup has to use the Georgia DOE template. So in looking at what they supplied with the petition, as well as what Georgia DOE's template is, it is not following the template. So if you could look, if you don't mind, again, the first piece you have is the letter of intent, then you have their petition. If you don't mind going to look at the next document, which is the new charter school application, it's the third, after the third blue page. This document, if you turn the page, has a flow chart for the petitioner and what they need to do and where they need to go and what they need to complete. When you go to page 5 of that document, there's a charter application package checklist. So as I am going through the state required checklist, and I am unable to check off anything here because application cover sheets weren't provided, the charter application itself, the only thing I was able to check here was about the 75 pages staying within that, the 11-point font. The original, I didn't have an original signed in blue ink, the assurances form and signature sheet, the documentation, the exhibits. There was one reference within the entire petition about an Exhibit K, see Exhibit K, but there were no exhibits supplied. In addition, the package was to include some different other specs that you can read there. It was so polar different from the requirement and what was submitted, I wondered, just to be truthful, was I missing something in the process? And so I sent an email and I called Alan Mueller at the state, who is the representative in charge of the charter system or charter school requests, to say, did I miss something? Is it letter of intent, then an initial petition, then a full application? That's what I was wondering. He said it's not. The petition is the application. So it brings me to asking you to flip to the last two documents in your notebook, and my apologies, I can't remember if it was Dr. K I said something to. I know where everything is, but page numbers would be quite beneficial after notebooks were copied and given. So my apologies on that. But there is a petition timeline. This is just me putting my thoughts down in regards to 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, because the Board of Education has up to 90 days to respond to the petitioner. So this, again, is just internal for me to ensure, we don't get behind the 8 ball on that. So please know that is a draft document, and it is just for internal only. The next document, which I know you will need time if you haven't had the opportunity already to go through, this is a draft, an in-progress draft of feedback. So you see there's an area for Board of Education, for superintendent, and then it goes on deputy superintendent. It breaks out departments within divisions for them to take their area of expertise and look at it through their lens as well. So what I'm hoping is for me to share a feedback document with the Board of Ed. So if you all have any questions, any thoughts, any things you need to put in there as feedback, that I will share that Google document with you for you to do, and then please reference the page number. The actual Georgia DOE application asked the petitioner to reference page numbers, but they did not. For us, in trying to gather the feedback, I'm going to need the page numbers from everyone's feedback to be able to share it out. So I will be sharing that, but you'll see, again, if you have not already done so, I was freezing when I came in, that you'll see a variety of feedback statements. Some are questions, some are things that they've noticed that are omitted or they reference, like I gave the example of Exhibit K, but then there was no exhibit. There's also a myriad of references to other school systems in here, acronyms that might have been another school system where they needed to write GSCS or needed to reference their GSA, Griffin Success Academy. Many things in there about meeting with the deputy superintendent and APS, and they're aware. And so, again, I know charter examples are given. You know, that I don't have any problem with, but there are several references you'll see in the feedback that have a mixture of other districts and district personnel and information in there that I just found myself circling to then give some appropriate feedback to Mr. McNair and Mr. Jackson. So you will also see that as well as you read the petition if you have not already. So I asked in Cabinet that I could bring this before you all today. The document that I shared with you, lastly, separate, the staple document that talks about evaluating the written petition, there are 4 responses that the board is charged with choosing the response after we have given all of the necessary information you may need to make this decision. Right now, it is extremely incomplete, and the charter petition they submitted does not follow the DOE application. So these 4 areas, there's a rejection group, there's a revision group, there's a clarification group, and an approval group. What has been submitted, we can go ahead and rule out the approval group, and we can rule out number 2, which is the revision group. The revision, the difference between the revision group and the clarification group is, and to me these words seem backwards, but the clarification group, when there is significant work to be done, it goes in the clarification group area, not in revision. So we only have the choice with what has been submitted at this point to reject outright, and the petitioner could resubmit a petition, which would trigger a 90 days again in another year, or we can go the clarification group route with the feedback, but it will need significant change. So I'm hoping our next steps could be the board and the superintendent adding in feedback. Some departments are still adding in some pieces. I think I put in the timeline that would all be added in by March 19th. Is that a doable date for you all to add in any feedback you have from reading the charter in a shared document that I'll give you? No. Okay, you need through April?
I have a question. Is it possible to not start the whole calendar year over for them, which means it has to be a clarification group, is that, okay? To ask them to resubmit it in the proper form,
It is, and that's what the clarification group would do.
okay? And so instead of, I mean, it just seems like an overwhelming task for our folks to have to go through and try to line everything up with the way it's supposed to be, is just ask them to resubmit it in that form. Could the 90 days start at that point, or the 90, because it would be submitted properly, if that's the right terminology, or is the 90 days start because they've already put it in?
No, if you go to clarification group, and that's a great question, it talks on the second page about the authorizers are required to issue a clarification letter to the clarification group applicant, listing required clarifications and informing them that they have 30 days to resubmit the petition for consideration. The applicant must grant the authorizer an additional 90 days to accept or reject. So they have 30 days to do clarification and get it on the right template. But from that, once they submit that, we have 90 days to give that feedback and go through this process of approval, rejection, those pieces. The time started ticking when they submitted their letter of intent.
Also, I think that you're going to go through and tailor it to your response answers, so that you can't go in the process where you did not change GPS, you did not change another government agency, and that's important. Also, what has been the communication to the group success academy, letting you know that when we look at your chart application package checklist, here are the things that are being omitted. Have we communicated with them yet?
No, because the petition didn't come in until after February 1st. So we received the letter of intent January 1. But we've been in reading that in the month of February. So that's why I asked Cabinet, could I get before you all at the February work session so we can all make sure we have an opportunity for feedback. What I needed from you all today is the guidance of how to move forward with one of these 4 options. So I'm hearing the request to be in the clarification group, which would trigger 30 days for them to do that, and then once submitted, within that 30 days, 90 days for our response.
What if, based upon, based upon what we have right now, you're able to set 4 different ways, but only looking at 2, either clarification or rejection. If you decide to go to rejection, then it's not information complete, as it should have been submitted. What is that next process of what the board wants to do with that? And then seeing the clarification, I still think the board would need more time to sit and discuss among each other before we're able to move forward.
Okay.
We also look at budget cuts coming, we look at other different things. I think that we need to be able to talk through and get with the professionals that are tasked with implementing this process to get the feedback. So I don't want the board to be tied to anything, saying it has to happen right now, and then give us enough time to seriously go through it. You have some that may support, so the board is looking in, you have some that may not. So I just remember I would like to go through the entire process and get feedback as it relates to me as a policy.
Sure. So I hope I answer a bit you asked about truly do we move forward with rejection and what implication does that mean, or do we move forward with clarification? The rejection group, if you look at the first sentence there, that it's flawed or incomplete to the extent the authorizer judges they cannot It cannot be amended or revised sufficiently to become approvable in this current application cycle. So if we rejected it, they would have next year's application cycle to come in. If we do clarification group, it's only going to give them 30 days from our feedback, and then the clock starts when they turn it in, 90 days for us to give feedback and make the decision.
Sarah, can I ask a question? Over here. And I haven't looked at one of these charter petitions in a while. If they use the state DOE template, are they required to demonstrate financial sustainability in that template?
There is a budget portion of the template that was not provided in our charter petition piece. But what they have to do in tandem, when they submit a letter of intent to the local board, they are also supposed to submit a letter of intent to Georgia DOE. Same with the petition. When they submit it to us, they're supposed to submit the petition. Now, what I don't know is if that is happening. I won't know that on that side. But once the Board of Education makes a decision moving forward, Georgia DOE Charter does not go in to do their approval until we have approved it as the local board to move forward. It still has to go through the state board lens and then be approved by state board.
But the financial component in their petition is, if I'm understanding, it's something that should have been presented to this board for them to be able to consider the petition.
There is a financial piece within the template application.
So I would think that's a pretty,
That's a big,
yeah, that's very big.
There's a reference in here to going through the 5-year continuum. There's a reference to, and forgive me, I don't have the number right here, but 8 to 10 administrative staff members. And so as I was reading, and we've had some discussion, there's no way for us to know how that's going to be funded, how any of it's going to be funded. Even where they reference buses, they won't have transportation in year 1 and 2, but they're going to buy 6 buses and do that in years 3, 4, and 5. But there's nothing inside the petition to help us understand where any of this funding's coming from.
That's ridiculous.
I was just going to suggest, is it possible for us at this time to be able to just open a line of communication with them, to be able to let them know that these are our 2 options? I don't believe 30 days gives them a ton of time to get it all together. Maybe they're ready for it and they just haven't given it to us already. Obviously, they will have this open meeting that they can reference to some of this discussion, understand what our thought process is. I would hate to decline them and cause them to wait an entire year if they're actually ready, and if it's coming to it. But they didn't follow the guidelines of what's supposed to be done, and so I think that they would choose themselves to, hey, we would like for this particular petition be rejected so that we can submit it another time.
so that gives, I guess, enough clearance as the board, the actions Jones has to communicate with them, let them know, the items that were reviewed to be approved, petitions forward. And then I guess from there, then we can, whether it takes 30 days worth of process, then from there we can add it back to the agenda and decision.
Ms. Jones, when was the first time that you were contacted about this? Last year?
September.
September of last year?
Mhm.
I'm just sitting here as a former educator thinking that my 6th graders probably could have done a better job than what's before us today. I'm sorry. I'm totally serious. Because if the individuals that came to us and to you are that serious about doing this work, then what is presented to this board should be complete, in my opinion. Not give them this or give them that. And to Mr. Shepherd's point, how are we supposed to make an informed decision without a budget? I mean, I just feel like I'm in a jar and somebody just shook me up.
There are several references to the local Board of Education only being the authorizer and not being the authorizer of any funding decisions. I have great concerns about that because it is taking the FTE funds and the federal funds appropriated for whatever students might enroll. And there are just a myriad of things, Ms. McDonald, that are very unclear.
Well, yeah, I
Even the
gathered
zoning.
that in your presentation. You know, I'm not for the clarification group. I'm for the total rejection group. And then another thing, I mean, all the time and effort that cabinet and employees of our system are putting into this, I'm really disappointed.
I will tell you, from what was submitted, my recommendation is the rejection group.
That is my recommendation too.
I think it's even a stretch to get them in the clarification group, to be
Because if they
honest.
can't even provide what this body needs to take a leap of faith, then I'm not willing to give them 30 days because I don't think they can do what all they need to do in 30 days. They haven't done it in September, October, November, December, 6 months. I'm for the rejection.
Ms. Jones, person of people that submitted this, are they even familiar that we did have a charter school and how that process worked?
I did in September when I met with Mr. Jackson. There was uncertainty on his part whether he was asking for a startup charter or a conversion charter. So I was explaining to him, when he said conversion charter, I said, so you have a school, a charter school now, you want to do a conversion for our local Board of Education to be an authorizer? And he said, no. And I said, well, then it's not a conversion, it's a startup. So we talked about that. I gave him resources. We did talk about the two experiences I have in Griffin-Spalding with charters, and one was Future Roads, which was a conversion from Third Ward when they opened. And then some years ago, Heron Bay, I think some of you will remember that Heron Bay came in asking for us to be the fiscal agent for that charter that did not move forward either. So.
I mean, you know, and I talked a little bit about it with Ms. McDonald, you know, and I was just sharing with Mr. Brown about it, and I think Ms. Sue touched on it. We don't need to tie up our staff doing stuff that they should have already done.
Absolutely.
And you know, they got enough that they have to do already, especially with this pandemic. And I'm jumping on the train with Ms. McDonald and the suggestion that you said you had to make about just the rejection, because they need to go back and they really need to follow the template and follow the guidelines and submit it. It's not that we don't want to be amenable, because our history shows that we have been. We worked with Heron Bay and we did it with Future Road, the conversion, but let's be honest, it got to be done right, decent and in order. Decent and in order.
And I did share the difference with Future Road, the conversion.
And that's what I was gonna ask.
Was
Why would they choose the startup when that's probably an easier process?
Well, I don't think they have a school to convert over. But I did explain the difference of Future Roads Charter, which is governed by our local Board of Education. It was, I mean, they were still bound, while they had some flexibilities with the charter, our local board still governed that site.
I guess that's not what he really wants.
No, there's an 11-member board, separate board he's referencing.
They want control, but they don't want, I mean, they don't want us to control or oversee it, but they want our money. That's what it boils down to.
Well, if the board was inclined to go the Rejection Group route, which is what I too would recommend, is it's saying as a best practice, authorizers should meet with them in person. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to share the same research information that I was able to locate, the feedback of what was problematic, and but that would throw them into the next application cycle.
And so this would not prohibit them or penalize them in any way with us or the state in doing something for the following year?
No.
Do we need a motion?
I know this, yeah, this is not a action item,
Right.
but I think Ms. Jones could communicate in a manner that, look, you all need to get your ducks in a row and come back next cycle. Because right now, you're looking at being rejected. And I think maybe giving her the opportunity to convey that and see what kind of response comes from them before we even, because we got a meeting coming up first Tuesday.
But legally, we have to respond to them by Monday, the 1st. We can't wait till the 2nd, correct?
No. We truly have a full 90 days. What was on that timeline was me thinking if we advance forward.
Thank you. That helps.
So again, that's why I didn't want to post that up here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So no, we have, the board has the full 90 days. But it is clear in here that a rejection letter is needed. So that would need to be provided by the board. We could be officially signed.
So
we
if I understand it, Ms. Jones is going to talk with them before the board takes any action with regard to a rejection letter or whatever. I would suggest that Ms. Jones make it clear to the folks that we really need to see some sort of a budget.
Yeah.
Because, if you're talking about, did you say 8 administrators?
11.
I know, they're.
Is it 11 administrators?
11 board members. 11.
No, I'm talking about employees of the charter school.
For 126 students? Really? Wow.
And I just don't know if these folks have any idea how much administrators make.
But, Mr. Shepherd, I want to clarify, because I didn't interpret that. Are we suggesting the rejection here? Because what you just said is, basically, I'm meeting with them and they'll have a choice between the clarification group and the rejection group. I thought I understood.
I'm rejection.
My personal opinion, I don't know if everybody's asking for that or not. I would like for us, this has been a presentation. We do have to put it on the agenda for Tuesday. We will make that decision at that point in time. That would give them an opportunity to share that with them, that it will be on there. If they want to come before us at that point in time about it in public comments, they could do that. But I think if they watch this particular feedback, that they will understand where we're coming from, that we're not opposing something, we just need it to be completed.
And why does it have to be Tuesday? Why does it have to be
I'm okay with the following board meeting, the following month.
So what I want to see is consideration for strategy for possibly May.
Okay,
Pushing 90 days there.
But we'll need to know, I need to know how to move forward. So what we have to do is one of these 4 options. That's got to be done before, even if it comes to the March 2nd board meeting for vote, for consent, I will need to have a rejection letter created and shared with them that's a possibility of moving forward. If we wait till May, we will, because the clock's ticking, we'll need to keep working. We'll need feedback, we'll need to keep working with this current petition.
That's why I want to do it, you know. we-
Yeah, I don't want you to continue wasting any time on this.
Right.
Well, then,
There you
the
go.
recommendation, I would say, is the rejection group. And then we would create a letter, it would be on March 2nd's board meeting for you all to make a vote on.
Right.
Vote to reject?
Yes.
Okay.
And the rejection letter actually informs them where they've fallen short in their petition.
Yes, it says here that the authorizers are required to issue that rejection letter to the applicants. This letter must state specifically the reasons for rejection and legal insufficiency. And then these reasons must be detailed and clearly stated. And it just puts a statement in there that a best practice is to do that in person, which I agree. I would be happy to do that. But it would happen after the March 2nd board meeting when you take your vote.
But
I am good with that if everybody else is.
And then I can
And
follow.
I would encourage you to do what I have said to Mr. Shepherd several times over the last 4 years, is to be firm but nice in that communication.
That's never
I
a
know you're
problem
always
for me,
nice,
so
but,
yeah.
I mean, because obviously, we want to be open to what the community is wanting and needing, and we want to, you know, we have folks within our community that obviously are feeling as though there needs to be something there that is provided for some students, and so, but I'm also like Ms. Sue, that I want to see all of the documents in place before we can move forward.
Right. And again, it's not a requirement to meet with them. I think that too, that best practice is one that we should do. And it'll be quite clear, all the feedback, so when they do cycle back around to another application process, you know, they'll know. So I'll bring this back, on the March 2nd board agenda. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
all right, virtual job fair update, Dr. Tiffany Taylor.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me this afternoon.
We won't make you take an oath this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so there is a presentation loaded for you. And so the title of this presentation is Keeping Talent in the Pipeline. And you will see here just on the introduction page that one of our missions is to attract, prepare, develop, support, and retain. And so as we move forward, I have provided for you a 2020 study from the Georgia School Board Association in regards to the state of teacher recruitment and retention. And one thing that this report highlights is that we know that teachers are the most important school-based factor in student learning. We know that it is the teacher who is there with the students, and we value the importance of teachers. It highlights that veteran teachers are important, and what we know there is that the knowledge and skills that veteran teachers have, in a sense, are irreplaceable. We go on to say that this makes our recruiting of strong candidates and growing them professionally being extremely important to school districts, and it should be a priority. Moving forward, this Georgia School Board Association reminds us that when there's a steady stream of educators who leave the profession, students and the district must pay a cost for that. And we see that oftentimes what the cost is by way of student achievement. And it also disrupts the school community and leads to further turnover just down the road. Also, it reminds us that these effects can particularly be harmful in schools that serve primarily low-income students. So when there's turnover in low-income areas, there's a compounding effect. And so finally, I just highlight from this report that each time a teacher leaves the district does spend thousands of dollars to replace him or her. And you'll see a bottom line there that in 2006, a study showed that that amounted to about $12,000 to replace a teacher once we have gone through the recruiting, the hiring process, and training. Next, what you will see is from the Georgia Department of Education in a 2018-19 annual report. This just shows that there is a persistent gap between vacancies and new hires. This is not necessarily what we see here in our district, but what I do think that it highlights is that there are more vacancies than there are people to hire, and that there's a great competition between districts to recruit and retain the right talent. Next, this signals what they call the troubling trends in the teacher pipeline. Here what we see is that there is a growing divide between the number of students who are enrolling in teacher ed programs and those who are completing. And you can see those numbers from 2010 to 2018. So on the next slide, this gets into just a page into Griffin-Spalding. And you'll see this is just from last year. You're able to see total number, and this should specifically be teachers at the elementary, middle, and the high school level. And you'll see that our retention rate was 83% with a 16.7% turnover. And we have, in the last couple of years, Ms. Dobbins has done a great job of ensuring that we have all of our vacancies filled by the first day of school. That is a goal of ours, and for several years now, we have been able to meet that goal. So we will get into some things that we are doing to recruit and to retain. Before I leave this particular page, last year we began looking at what we call retention plans. And what those retention plans are a highlight of each school's 5-year data. And so you see here, this is just 1 year district-wide. And so what I provide for each school principal is what their trend data looks like over a 5-year period of time. In addition to that, what principals have is just some information into why are teachers leaving. And so we have just begun some work where they're looking specifically not just that they had a vacancy or that they had someone to leave, but what was the reason for that. Those retention plans go further into what we call state interviews. And what the state interviews are is identifying top talent, identifying those teachers that we deem as irreplaceable, looking at those teachers who have invaluable skills that we need to remain in the building and in our district. And then looking at what can we do even at a school level to focus on improving culture and climate.
Miss Dr. Taylor, I'm sitting squirming in my seat.
Okay.
And you've been around, and I've brought up turnover and retention 100 times.
Yes, sir.
And just my heart is just jumping and leaping that we are now putting importance on turnover and retention. But I have to insert this while it's fresh on my mind. What are the benchmarks that we've set in these two areas? What are our numbers that we're trying to hit and stay below? Have we set those benchmarks?
We have, and it's tied to the balanced scorecard. I believe it's 87%. I don't have that in front of me, but I'll double check that and confirm that with you.
What about the turnover benchmark?
And so it would be roughly 13%
Roughly
that we would like to say beneath that. But I would venture to say that any loss is significant.
Yes.
We,
$12,000 to replace them is significant.
right, and we can identify some particular areas in which technology, CTAE, that is an area where it is extremely difficult to find, a teacher. Math teachers are extremely difficult to find. We have been advertising for math teachers. We do set a benchmark. Nonetheless, we do recognize that one of our best strategies is retention, is to keep good teachers that we have.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about the STAR, irreplaceable employees, because in my personal assessment, we've lost some key people, some STAR employees that we could have probably retained if we put some effort toward, just speaking from my own experience. I was a STAR employee, and I told them I was going to leave. They opened up the checkbook and the restaurant of my choice. So
Yes,
that's
sir.
a good thing sometimes.
Yes, sir. Duly noted. So now, if I may, if we move on to innovative initiatives, and so there are 4 that I'll highlight and 1 that I'll just briefly mention that is in the pipeline. And so one innovative initiative through the Human Resources Department, I'll mention Mercer first because we have had that professional development school partnership the longest. And so what this allows us to do is to have a partnership with Mercer. They provide STEM resources for Cowan Elementary and Cowan Middle. And then also what we hope that we will gain in exchange as it pertains to recruiting is that we just keep close to new teachers and potential new hires. We have also went into partnership with Gordon State College, and we're doing something similar with Futural and with Rehoboth Road. The second is the GREAT program, and what the GREAT program is Georgia College reached out to us. It is a residency program, and the effort is to attract teachers early while they're in their pre-service program, put them in the classroom along with a supervising teacher. But through this SREB grant, Georgia College is paying, we have 3, paying them a full teacher's salary, and what we provide in exchange are benefits. But the teacher has to make a 3-year commitment. And so what you'll see, one of our strategies is getting teachers early. We feel like if we can attract them early, provide them some support, then hopefully that will provide us some longevity. Next 3 is the Teachers as Interns program. This program has been up and running for several years. What our intent with that is to show students at high school level that they can go into teaching as a pathway, as dual enrollment, that they can move into step 2, which would be the Aspiring Teachers Academy through Gordon State College, with potentially classes being offered in Griffin, and we identified Futural and Rehoboth as potential sites that could host those classes. And then the third step is that they could come back as a junior in college but serve as a teacher as intern. And so right now we have the Teacher as Interns program going, but what we're trying to do is just build that pipeline so that we can continue to grow our own teachers within the district.
Do you know how many off the top of your head that we have in the intern program right now?
This year we have 4. That is Cowan Middle, 2 at Cowan Middle, 2 at Cowan Elementary. Last year we had 2 at Moore, 2 at Cowan Middle, and then the prior year we had teachers at Jordan, Hill, and at Atkinson. This year we're just taking it a little bit slow, not so as to not put interns ahead of fully qualified teachers, just with the state of hiring and everything, but we do have that partnership open and ready. The final one that is in place that I mentioned is the Elevate K-12. We did have a need earlier in the year with the Spanish position at Griffin High School that we had advertised, did not have a teacher that we could put in that classroom. In a sense, it is ironic that when we started looking at Elevate K-12 was pre-pandemic, but since we were in the pandemic, basically this model is what we see our teachers doing every day. But what Elevate K-12 has access to are national database of teachers. So our Spanish teacher could be in another state, and so the teacher shortage that we have, Elevate does not have those barriers, and so we do have now an Elevate K-12 classroom at Griffin High School in Spanish, and we also have one at Carver Road Middle School in the technology classroom. So before I leave just innovative practices, the final that I would like to mention that you don't see listed here because it is a new and upcoming initiative. Currently, in terms of African American male teachers in our district, in particular at elementary, we have about 1% of African American male teachers. And so what we're going to look to do, there's an opportunity for us to provide some professional development to African American male teachers in a hope that we can bring more African American male teachers into our classroom to serve students who look just like those students in the classroom. So that is up and coming, and I look forward to being able to give you an update on how that's going in the coming future. Now I'll transition just a little bit to recruitment. I know that you all wanted to know how did our fair go, so I'm getting to that point at this time. And so what you'll see is that we are keeping the door open in a sense for recruitment. You'll see here these are just a few of the colleges that we are recruiting with. It is difficult at this time to recruit virtually with colleges. We just don't have as much presence, and what I mean by that, when we go to a face-to-face college fair, we're able to just get out, interact with people. If they don't come to the table, we're able to reach out to them, bring them to the table. And so in a virtual format, we are at the mercy of that school, at that platform for those schools to log in. And so what we have done this year, we've hosted our own fair with Gordon, Alabama State, and Clayton State. We have done some hiring this year from those fairs, but we'll continue to go to some of the other ones that you see listed there. In addition to hosting our own fairs. And so February 6th, we had a virtual job fair. We had 100 registrants for that, which we felt like was really good. We will continue to recruit. We will not stop recruiting. We feel that early hire is a great strategy, just getting out in front. And so we had 89 people to participate in that fair, and 34 of those 89 principals deemed them as ready to hire. And so we feel like that was a successful virtual fair. In addition to that, Dr. Sauce has led multiple elementary early hire interview sessions. With that, we have been able to offer 15 early contracts to elementary school teachers. We've offered 2 to middle school and 2 to high school. Middle school and high school, I will just say that the pool is just a little bit more shallow at that level. Our next fair will be March 18th. It will be virtual as well, 4 to 6:30. What we're looking to do with that fair is really, at that time, personalize and really allow principals to advertise positions that they'll have. At that time, contracts go out March 3rd, and so we feel like we'll have a better indication of what positions are available at particular schools. So this is going to be a really good opportunity for us to kind of close the deal on this year and just start wrapping up some of those known vacancies that we have.
Yeah, a question on that.
Okay.
The early hires, is there a target number that we are looking for? Because in this is kind of a question and an assumption, maybe all in the same statement, because the principal then still has even though we've done an early hire, they still have the right to do the interview process with those that are in that pool to see if that's gonna be a good fit for their school?
Right, and so once they are vetted in a sense, and principals do sit on those interview panels. And so we open that up to as many principals who want to come. And so what we want to do as well is to be customer service friendly as well in the hiring process. And so let's say with 11 elementary schools, you could have 11 interviews. And so what the pool process allows us to do is to have 4 or 5 principals sitting on one panel, 5 people see them, and if they agree that they are ready for hire, we extend an early contract to them. So when a principal has a vacancy, they draw from the pool. They will interview them in a sense to get a suitability for their school, but those people have been offered an early contract.
So if they've been offered an early contract, that means they've had an interview with the principal and with Dr. Sauce, let's say for elementary?
That is correct.
Is that at the same time, or is it another step in the process, maybe?
Please.
Sure, happy to speak to that process. This is the 3rd year that we've been using this early hire pool process for elementary teachers. The way that it works is those that apply, you don't necessarily have to wait for the job fair. We actually began the process before the job fair, as we have previous years as well. Those that apply, I actually personally vet the resumes and the applications.
Clear as mud. Clear as mud.
I guess the question I have, Dr. Taylor, is I know that the first job fair, which was just the 6th of this month, the schools didn't know their allotments, right? I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. I'm sure that's coming down the pipe, so to speak, as far as the allotments for the budget and things like that. But I find it really difficult for principals to go to a job fair when they don't even know how many bodies they've been allotted. Does that make sense?
It does.
And I hear that out in the streets, so to speak,
Yeah.
sometimes.
And they've expressed that, and we have been in conversations with them. Similar to just the early hire concept is difficult for principals to see sometimes, you know, thinking, I don't even know who I'm going to have. You know, how can we be interviewing? So I do understand that. If we go back to like the title of this presentation is keeping just some talent in the pipeline, and we don't want to stop looking for, you know, good talent. I give a baseball analogy, if I may. My son plays baseball, and even though COVID shut baseball down last year, and NCAA said you can keep your seniors, meaning his school, 9 seniors, you may return, the coach continued to recruit. Like, we're always looking for good talent. And so just keeping with what Dr. Sauce said, typically we've hired 140 to 180 teachers in a year.
Right.
We don't want to get ourselves at a point where we are not looking for talent. And then when the allotments shake out, if you will, you know, and I'm not underestimating or making light of where we are with the allotments. We're in a difficult year and a different year. But we are expecting that when those even out, if you will, that we will be ahead of the curve. And the way that I see it is that Griffin is really poised to get some top talent right now, because some districts are not having fairs. They're kind of slow-footing it a little bit, and I think Byron and the cabinet can speak more to allotments and things like that. But we do feel that we are just keeping good talent in the pipeline, that the number 15 is a safe number, and that we will not overhire. But I do hear that. I've talked that through with several principals.
And the other, it's really not, it's just a comment, and this is nothing against the process that we currently use, but then again, it might be. I think all of you know in this room that I'm about autonomy at the school level and allowing principals to hire their own, because I think that's important. I went through it myself as a teacher in Forsyth County when teachers came in and met with other teachers that they would potentially team with. As you all know, as a 6th grade teacher, and team teaching was in effect, obviously still is. I just want to be sure that we allow our principals to have the autonomy that he or she needs in their schools to hire people that fit their schools. And I worry about that when we go out and hire 15 to 20 or so, or whatever the magic number is for that year based on what you guys know downtown. I'm just all about autonomy. If I can be assured that our principals have the autonomy, then I feel good. If they don't have that autonomy, I don't feel good.
And they do. As Dr. Sauce stated, they can come to any interviews, and I can speak to it from a principal's perspective. We were doing pools when I was a principal. And so what we have to remember is that we all use AppleTrack.
Yes.
Okay? And if there's 47 candidates in there, there's 47 candidates in there. And what we were noticing, sometimes there would be a little delay on the part of the principal for whatever reason. You got busy, you didn't call and set up an interview, and good talent would get biased. And so really what we've done is really just to help facilitate that process by setting it up. You know, Ms. Jones, the elementary and secondary administrative assistant, she sets up the interview, she calls them, gets them at the table, and really this is to be a help to principals. And I personally, as a principal, when there was an interview, I was there. Whether I had a vacancy or knew about it, because I wanted to see who they were. And so principals do have that opportunity to come and be part of that process, and what we're just doing is facilitating that so that we had those 47. If it's 47, it doesn't matter if the principal is responsible for and they can do their own hiring still. But we're going to continue to just keep good talent coming, and hopefully that will be to assist principals.
But the possibility is still there, if I hear you correctly, is that for the 15 early hires perhaps that Dr. Sauce has hired, he or she principal may have to take one of those hires that he or she may not really do cartwheels over? Sure.
Certainly not anything that was proposed to support on this. Secondly, and I'm quite comfortable from the elementary perspective that principals will share with you that they appreciate the process, that it's helpful to them, it's efficient to them, that it's something that allows them to identify great candidates for the school in a more timely manner. Additionally, to be clear on the full process from the elementary perspective, this does not involve placement. This is just creating a critical mass of early, high potential candidates that we don't want to get away, so to speak, to
Sure.
other counties, that we are assigning them to will in advance, that principals then can go to for their own placement decisions about the 2 or 3 or 4 that they interview from the school that they think are a great fit for the school. So, me personally, my perspective, and also from the human resource perspective, we are not dictating in terms of placement.
Okay.
We're creating a critical mass of great candidates that are great fits for our system, that could be great fits for any number of schools in our system, and principals and local teams, and then decide who they'd like to recommend or offer the job to. One last thought too about that, we can talk about the number 15. The last number of years, we've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 elementary vacancies overall. So of course, we're only talking about maybe 1/4 of the total vacancies at the elementary level. And I'm very proud to say, the last 3 years in a row, we have started the school year with every single elementary homeroom with a teacher in the home. I think again, if you ask elementary principals, I'm very comfortable to tell you that this process has helped to achieve that.
Sure.
Every single home has got a teacher on day one of the school year.
Well, for me, it's just about the autonomy and the choices that he or she can make for their individual schools. That's really my most important point. Thank
So
you.
is there a magic number then for middle school and high school?
Well, those are the,
I would just say,
Okay,
for,
go ahead.
for secondary, middle schools, and high schools, it's a bit of a supply and specific certification issues with a lot different than elementary. So we've used the same process, even my first year in the district with Ms. Dobbins and when Dr. Taylor was a principal. And our principals, we schedule interviews together. We make certain that we have at least 4 or 5 of them on particular days we interview. We have the applicants in the folder, they're screened, they're rated, we call them in interview. And for our part, we generally get maybe 5 or 6 per year. And most instances, I would say 2 or 3, those people are hired during the year as vacancies occur. They don't wait till the following school year. But again, it's situations as well where principals have total autonomy. And at most points, because of the supply, they're pretty much fighting over them. And the person has the option to go to the school they desire.
I just want to say thank you and thank you.
absolutely. Okay, and so I'll move to the next piece, the next part of this presentation. I'll try to move through as quickly as possible. And so we started with saying that teachers were the single most important factor to student learning, and research tells us that leadership is next to teachers. And so, excuse me, we have had a Quality Leaders Academy since 2015. And so when we talk about keeping talent in the pipeline, that speaks for our leaders as well. And so the next part of the presentation just highlights a review that Human Resources is participating in with GOSA, which is the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. And you'll see on that slide is that they host the Governor's School Leadership Academy for the state of Georgia, meaning they turnout leadership programs for leaders across our state. And so we wanted to just go back and review our Quality Leaders Academy, how we were training our leaders, just look at the impact of quality leaders, and to get some recommendations if needed. And so on this team are Dobbins, Kennedy, Sauce, Warren, Dottie English, Greg Gardner, Lindy Pruitt, and Melvina Crawl from Professional Learning. And so what I provided for you on this next slide, I just want you to see that Quality Leaders is considered a pre-service training program. And across the top, that graphic shows you that under the umbrella of Quality Leaders, you have aspiring leaders. Those are teacher leaders. You have aspiring principals who are APs. Then you have principals who are in their early career, leaders at work, and then people who desire to be in the district office. So going back to the 2015-16 school year, you'll see that we started with 3 aspiring leaders, 3 aspiring principals. And you see for each year, I have outlined for you the number of aspiring principals and the number of aspiring leaders that participated in that program in that respective year. Also, if you'll note at the bottom, I listed for you in that year, and this is not cumulative, meaning there could have been an aspiring leader who was promoted after that year. But what I'm providing for you is in that particular year, you see the number of aspiring leaders who were promoted to either be an assistant principal, central office, so on and so forth. I will not read these numbers to you, but this just shows you, in a sense, the longevity of this program that we have. And then you'll see that in this 2021 school year, we do have 7 aspiring principals and 17 aspiring leaders. Moving forward, this shows you how many new principals and assistant principals we have had by the year. You can look at the 2015-16 school year where we hired 8 new principals and 6 new assistant principals. I'll just move forward. You can see in the 2018-19 school year, in that year we named 4 new principals and 9 new assistant principals. And we've already looked at the impact of new teachers and turnover, if you will. There's a similar impact to when there's a turnover of leaders. And so when we look at a review of this program, we're just looking at what are the things that we need to put in place to really just help with the turnover. And when we do have new leaders in place, what does that induction program look like? And so the GOSA project is an effort to review what we currently have in place and then offer some recommendations about what we need to do in the future. Are there any particular questions about this slide? Okay. And so next, as we look at the impact of quality leaders, or as we look at how many leaders are hired internally or how many leaders are hired from what we deem externally, we have laid this out from the 2015 school year through the current, and you can see those internal and external hires by the numbers and then also by the principals that are listed there. And so 66.7% of the principals that we've hired have been internal since 2015, and 33% of them have been external. To me, this gives just a good faith and transparency to our participants in the Aspiring Leaders Program, in the principal pools and the assistant principal, so that you just see what that distribution is. And then likewise on the next slide, you see that comparison for assistant principals in terms of who's hired internally and who is hired externally. And so some of the support that we're providing for our principals, we were sending new principals to the University of Georgia Early Career Residency Principal Program in their first year. This has been phased out. Now we support our new principals with the Georgia State Beginning Principals Program. We have 3 principals this year who are participating with Georgia State with virtual leadership coaching. We have monthly new leader induction, and then we also have new leader mentors. And so as I close, some potential next steps. One, when we talk about teacher recruiting and retention, we do want to continue retention planning with a focus on that culture and climate. We'll continue to participate and host job fairs, look for innovative programs that attract teachers to our district, and we feel that the early hire process is a good process that we will continue, just getting out ahead of other districts and getting the best early. And then when it comes to a review of the Aspiring Leaders program and pools, what we hope to get out of that is that we will revisit our vision of what we want aspiring leaders to gain from the program. We will continue to determine the impact of quality leaders, identify gaps and areas of improvement, and then finally identify what resources our leaders need to continue to be successful.
What is the time frame on those reviews?
On the GOSA review?
Well,
or just
the aspiring leaders and the pools and...
Right. Well, we are in the middle of that work. We've had 2 meetings. We are have to plan the 3rd meeting, and hopefully by May or June we can wrap up just that review and start looking at what those recommendations would be.
Okay. Just for Mr. Simmons to be able to hear from my perspective of things, and for you to know this also, going into the pool process, we know that a lot of large systems use that pool process. One of the drawbacks of a pool process is the smaller ones still have, especially a small town feel, small town knowing one another. There are some that don't want to put their name into the pool because they may or may not be ready for where they're at to know that they're interested in being in the pool. They may be the best candidate for a position that comes available, but because they're not in the pool, they have no way of applying for that position. I realize it's a catch-22 with ways that you go. I have talked with some of the board members and extensively with Mr. Smith about how can we just begin looking at maybe a hybrid to this pool. I don't know what that would look like. You know, my thoughts are, if you're in the pool, it's weighted heavier than if you're not in the pool. I realized, I think we did that in one circumstance where we went through the pool process and didn't find the right person for the position, and so then had to reopen that position outside of the pool. So whatever it may be, I just want to make sure I shared my opinion on that process. As long as we're continuing to do the talent that we're doing, which I commend you for the work that you're doing and all of that work, it's wonderful. I just want to make sure that we always are able to get the very best for Griffin-Spalding. And so I just throw that out there as something to talk about maybe in the future.
Thank you. And we will certainly include that in this review. You know, obviously with Mr. Simmons on, just looking at the view, I'll just take you back in some talks that I've had with Ms. Dobbins. Of course, you all know I'm new to HR. And so she helped me with some perspective when you look at perhaps that 2018-19 school year where we hired 4 new principals, even the next year, 6 principals in 1 year, and 5 new assistant principals in a year. A pool is a good tool, you know, to have, because otherwise, and we're amidst this process like right now, but if we didn't have a pool, you'd be posting 6 different vacancies, really more than that, because you have the assistant principal vacancies as well, and it is just laborious. And so I think that is why we moved to a pool process, but we are at a point where we're certainly looking at a review thereof. Are we still in that point of needing that type of process?
I'm not coming against the process at all. I think it has worked for us. I just want it to continue to be the best process make sure that, so I love the fact that you're doing a review.
And you bring up a good point, Mr. Dawes. There have been twice for secondary principals where we felt that the pool wasn't the best fit for a position, and it was opened up statewide or nationwide, and we hired. So at times, we do bypass the pool when there's not a great fit.
But, and I know, I share the same concern as Mr. Dawson, board members have talked, but I do think we need to, set parameters on how we use the pool.
Yes, sir.
We need to rework that because, as I've shared with Mr. Smith and board members, it can be disheartening
Yes.
for candidates to be in the leadership program going through and never even move past a certain point in the pool, and they've been dedicated to the system and the processes here. So I think we just need to look at how we utilize the pool, and I share some
Yes,
of the
sir.
same concerns as Mr. Dawes does.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Next,
Thank you,
board
Dr. Taylor.
members, I want to thank her in advance for coming to be with us in person, but I had a conversation with our Archway professional, Mrs. Brittany Bullock, and she has chosen to come and be with us tonight, so we're going to give her the podium, and she has a presentation for us.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Holmes, for having me today. I started back in December of 2020, so I'm fairly new. I've got the chance to work with a few of you, Mr. Will Doss, Adam Pugh, we met a couple of times. I'm coming to UGA from the Technical College System of Georgia, and there I worked in the State Office of Workforce Development. And so there I wore many hats, but predominantly I was the connector, the liaison to our business community across the state, in cultivating relationships so that we can hear directly from industry what their current and future workforce needs are, and how educators and workforce developers across the state can create career pathways, can create training programs that make sense for local economies. So coming into this role, I'm really excited to see the partnership between the city, the county, and the school board, because I'm sure you all agree with me that, I believe that our school systems are the foundations of our communities and the way to create a better quality of life for individuals who live and work and play here. So I just wanted to take some time to introduce myself, to reintroduce Archway, and to update you on some things that we're working on. Sometimes I think, you have these programs like Archway in your community, and you know that it's a thing that you have, but what are they actually doing? So just wanted to take some time to reintroduce us. So the Archway Partnership connects communities across the state with higher education resources to locally identified needs, all around community and economic development issues. So we have all of these great resources at the University of Georgia that we connect Griffin-Spalding County to, and it's all about what is identified by the community. As Archway professionals, we're not here to tell you what you should do or how you should do something. We're simply here to listen and connect you to the resources based on the challenges and opportunities that you have identified for us. This next slide kind of talks about all the things we have in our toolbox to assist through this process. Community-based service, student experiential learning opportunities for our students at UGA, and then also faculty research applied to critical community issues. So again, we listen to you, we hear the challenges that you're having, and then have our network of faculty members who can either connect their classroom and the work that they're doing back to your community, or the subject matter expertise of the faculty member themselves. Sometimes they come into a community and assist where it's appropriate. This next slide is kind of the best example of how we work in each of our communities. And to the left, you'll see these are all the communities that we serve across the state. Currently, we're in 7 communities. Griffin-Spalding is actually the biggest community that we work in. So it's a unique situation because you all do have so many resources in comparison to our smaller communities. You'll see here that we're kind of spread across the state. It's all about serving our mission, which is as a land-grant institution to provide service to the state as a whole. In each of the communities that we serve in red here, we have an Archway professional. So someone like myself who comes in and facilitates conversations with community stakeholders, engages in different meetings, or really is just here to be a listening ear And I manage an executive committee that meets monthly. That executive committee is made up of our funding partners in this community, which are the city, the county, and the school board, each of which has a representative that's a part of that group. In the past, I've worked with Mr. Roldos. I know we're going to be working with Mr. Holmeston and Mr. Simmons. I'm excited to get to know you. I know we haven't had the chance to meet, but I'm excited that you're here. And so each month that executive committee meets and they talk about local issues. I like to think of it as a continuous needs assessment. So they're constantly talking about what's going on in the community, and I think it's a great opportunity to just break down the silos. I think we all kind of run our passion projects, and then sometimes we duplicate services. We forget what each other is doing, so it's a great time to come together and talk about how we can move forward towards shared goals. And then from there, that executive committee sets priorities, and then we have our issue work groups who kind of focus in on specific priority areas to kind of get the work done that the executive committee has charged us with. The next slide is kind of just a wordle of what the archery professional role looks like. We're a supporter, a connector, a facilitator, and most importantly, I would say that we're a neutral party here in the community. We don't engage in the community politics or service one over the other, and also we're here to do what you ask us to do, not anything that we're here to tell you to do. So here in Griffin-Spalding, there are 5 priority areas, which are community development, community image, education for a quality workforce, community health and wellness, and intergovernmental collaboration. Like I said before, because Griffin-Spalding does have a significant amount of resources in comparison to our other communities, I know a large benefit here is the intergovernmental collaboration, ensuring that our local leaders can work together collaboratively, efficiently, and effectively so that we can get great work done together. I guess some examples of some of the work that we've done together. So in quality of life, I think a lot of educators have been engaged in our poverty task force, which then turned into the opportunity community, which is getting off the ground now. And so we look for opportunities to, again, make sure that our priorities are touching all of those funders, all of our stakeholders in our community, so that there's a mutually beneficial opportunity for everyone. We can skip over this next one because I think you get the idea that I'm here to connect you to your resources at EGA and also here in the community. But you know, what are some of the partnership benefits? You as a community, you have direct access to our higher education resources. We're here to address specific priority issues identified by the executive committee, by the stakeholders that I get to engage with. And then our faculty have direct access to communities to research, and students have the opportunity for real-world experience. So I would say those last two kind of show the mutually beneficial relationship that we have here, that you are able to lean on the expertise of the University of Georgia, and our students and our faculty are able to engage with you and kind of grow their depth of knowledge as well. One example that we have going on right now, actually recently I got to connect with Dr. Ergel and Chad Pruitt of the CTAE program, and they are getting ready to engage in their CTAE local needs assessment. Because Chad and I actually were connected through the Department of Education in a past life. He knows of my experience with kind of having those community conversations with businesses about what do you need today, how can we tailor our programs to meet the needs of your communities. He asked for us to come in, and Dr. Ergel asked us to come in and kind of help facilitate that meeting. And so you guys get to lean on that extra resource of some certified facilitators with our trade partnership to come in and help facilitate that conversation and have a great local needs assessment. So yeah, that's a piece there. And then I just wanted to share with you what 2020 looked like. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it enough that 2020 was a year like no other, and we did a lot of pivoting, but I think there was a lot of great things accomplished here. I started in December, so I can't take credit for any of this. This was the work of our great executive committee. 18 projects completed, and about $250,000 of return on investment to the community. So what are we working on right now? We are engaging in a joint strategic planning process. This started back in the summer. Well, the work started in the summer, but it's my understanding that it's been years in the making through intergovernmental retreats that there was a desire to have a joint strategic plan, a way for the city, the county, and the school board to identify shared goals that they could move forward together and accomplish great things. So over the summer, we started with individual surveys, with individual interviews. We did some data analysis of the community, and then also had a conversation with our executive committee. And what has come of that are 5 priority areas that our joint strategic plan will focus on. And those are crime, economic development, housing and blight. I think in your printed copy it says K-12 education, but if you could cross out K-12 public education and just say education. Our executive committee had a conversation, and Mr. Doss, if I'm saying this wrong, you can back me up, but we had a conversation that would probably be too narrow of a focus, and so we're opening up to just education in general to make sure that we include our partners that are post-secondary, adult learners, whatever it may be, that we wouldn't just kind of niche in, and then also poverty and charity. And I will say that I am aware that you all are engaging in your own strategic planning process, and Mr. Pugh and I have had the chance to talk about making sure that they work together, that we're looking at the same priorities, and that we can all move forward and kind of put our same energy towards those goals. And so now where we're at is we're forming our subcommittees around each one of these areas to make sure that they are inclusive as possible, that they represent different community perspectives. I think it's clear that each one of our entities, the city, the county, and the school board, has a vested interest in improving each of these areas because they make for a holistic community. And so that is going to wrap up over the summer. We'll be working the next 5 months, or the next few months, with the 5 subcommittees, to get that done. But that's all I have for you today. Like I said, I just wanted to take some time to introduce myself and let you know what we're working on, and I appreciate the time, and I'm happy to take any questions if you all have them.
Any questions, board members?
I just wanted to say thank you for coming, and it's nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
And also, Mr. Simmons, Dr. Warren, and the other cabinet members and board members, we in our discussion, we are embarking on our strategic plan. We like to include Ms. Brittany in that process with us to make sure we cover some areas that we may not normally cover. So we look forward to that working relationship.
Awesome, thank you. And also, Dr. Warren, thank you for helping me coordinate today.
All right. Thank you so much for coming. You don't have to stay for the end. You can head on back home. All right. We got the golden boy coming up for our January financials, Mr. Byron Jones. You the golden boy along with the money, right?
I thought that was Ric Flair's name. Or Chick Donald, excuse me, if you're wrestling. Good evening again, board. I'm going to try to be real brief. I do have a couple of goals with my couple of minutes. It may differ than normal. One, I wanted to just talk to you about placing this on this meeting. I think we might have had a question about that. I wanted to tell you my intent. Run through this report and then circle back to a couple of questions that we had. Maybe when Dr. Taylor was up here, I didn't want to interrupt her to say a couple of comments. So first, I looked back and trying to get used to our meeting schedule. And you can see here I've scribbled all over this board-approved meeting agenda, what you scheduled that you approved in December for this year. And trying to look at strategically when to place these financial reports, which makes the most sense. Obviously, looking back at past COVID, when you all expected. And I guess from a business meeting versus work session, my normal was, in prior life, was work session, doing it, and then my former district had to actually vote on the report. So I actually went back and talked to a few people, including the former superintendent here, to try to see if there was any rationale. So that being said, the only reason we're doing it today is because we've got some lurking items to discuss with y'all through the superintendent in the future, interim and permanent, budget-wise, and other things that are going to take precedent. Plus, my office is trying to get as efficient as possible. We're even maximizing the high school intern that is from Spalding High School to help with some of this. We've been able to turn this stuff around a little quicker than maybe we thought we could. So that's the rationale for tonight. I hope that's okay. So we'll run through it, and that's the only reason for it, just to try to stay ahead. But we can certainly do it whenever in the future, however we need to do that. So, all right, so doing these reports early sometimes, and I'm on page 1 of the narrative, sometimes the information would not be available. So we'll go through this little quick narrative. Our revenues are tracking obviously as well. They're very similar to last year, less than 0.2% less. That's because the tax collections have come in through the month of January. We went over this several months now, so you know what I'm talking about on that. The expenses are actually almost 1% down. So when you track 46% versus a 58% budget, that's good. And we know some of the reasons for that. The obvious item would be bus fuel and things like that, where they're not running them on the road unless there's things they're doing in the interim. And some of that will change next week, so we'll see some of that come back in line. But hopefully we can retain some of those savings as we go down the line. Little bullet there on state revenues. I've been checking the state website. I don't know if they've stopped doing the press release things that I pulled that from, or if they're just behind on posting them, so I still don't have a current one on that. I'm assuming, Dr. Warren, did you email them that legal recap thing? The legal expenses, I think I sent that in a separate email. The legal expenses, did y'all receive?
It was sent to us.
Yeah, so it's exempted on the report because it wasn't available, but I got an invoice like Monday. So that if you receive that, then that satisfies this item. I think it's 59.
I think the amount was included in there, but I don't think the actual invoice.
Yeah, the amount was included, but the actual services during the month were not included, so it was good to get that.
We'll check that and get that to you in the morning. That was the amount, that's why it's not listed on this, so we got that to you really before the meeting, so we'll move forward. Again, for special revenue, again, we continue to look at the CARES money. I want to make a comment about that again when I'm done. This is CARES 1 money, which was the approximate $3 million monies that we are in this operating in this year. Capital projects, you can see the top 4. Again, that's reported when we cut the checks here. There's still ongoing work, but that's where it's at for the month of January. East Floss, again, by doing this, that doesn't post to the end of the month. So we've already reported what the January receipt was because it was for December's retail month. So we won't get the one until February 28th for that. And it wouldn't have been available on this report if we did it on March 2nd anyway, because I had to have this in a week prior. And nutrition, again, you know, we've talked about this, that continues to grow on a budget of general fund helping nutrition of about $500,000. It's approaching $1 million. You know, we keep identifying that, and I know Mr. Akins and I we'll have conversations about this. We will have to make a decision before the end of the year on what to do about that, or if it's, you know, make it whole. That's really what you're dealing with. You can't close the year out and have a deficit in nutrition, or you have to go through a big deficit elimination plan, look at meal price increases that you may have not been doing. I don't know, I'm assuming you look at that every year, but there's some things with CARES that we might can use to help with that. But if the kids are coming back next week, obviously that'll help with some of that, because we will have some sources of that feeding the children. The participation should increase, I would assume. So just on the report side, page 2, looking down at your total fund equity, you're approaching $30 million, which is about what it was last year. That's the only one I was going to point out on that. That's the main one that you would look at. The general fund financial statement, page 3. I'm on the 3rd column down year to date. It looks like we're running about almost $10 million revenue ahead of expense this point in the year, which should be expected with performing under budget on expenses and revenues already collected for the taxes for the year. Again, page 5, I'm reporting to you 3 to 4 months of CARES Act draws. And again, I tell you that same thing every month. We'll see that continue to dwindle as we get towards the end of the year. Let's see. I'm going to flip back to page 11. Just another look at nutrition again, where you can see the categories there. I think Mr. Holmes, you had pointed something out about this a couple of months ago, just to show you now where that's still looking. Again, that bottom number is reported on the narrative. over on page 13, and you all know this, but I'm just reiterating, since we did a consent agenda item to add Mr. Simmons to the bank accounts towards Fund 1, these are the accounts that we're adding him to, these balances. So again, typically we keep money at the state, pull it down to the local bank when necessary to draw higher interest at the state. Currently, we have the reverse effect going on at our Wells Fargo account where we've got all of our tax money. We're going to need to send some money back up to this investment account since the taxes have come in. But these are the accounts that you gave consent to add his name to. Page 14, you can just look at the last 3 dates and add all that together. That's the bulk of your tax receipts on the 2020 digest. So you're looking at, getting up to close to $19 million there that's been collected probably in the last 45 days through the tax commissioner's office. And really the rest of this isn't changing because we don't have the current SPLOST deposit for the retail month of January yet available. So any questions on the report itself?
Thank you.
Okay. Let me circle back for just a second. I think I'm still going pretty quick here. One person in this room is going to laugh at me because this is probably the 3rd time I've said this. I said it on the Google Meet the other day, but we did some customer service data surveys, and so I'm not exempt from that. So my office got the same thing. So, opportunities and good things. One of the good things they pointed out about finance folks is we're generally transparent. So being transparent, sometimes the assets, sometimes liability. The assets, you tell people stuff on the timeline so that you're credible in following a timeline that has been put out maybe before I was even hired, or right in the summer. The liability is you tell them something that you don't have fully vetted out decisions of what the end game is down the line. So going back, I think, to your point earlier, Ms. McDonald, I think our timeline for sharing, now this is the traditional Griffin-Spalding timeline for sharing allotments and things earned through states. That's, teaching allotments, for lack of a better term. That was pegged to go the week of February 8th, whatever that Monday through Friday week of that was. So we sent some initial data out, and what I mean is each principal got a detailed email, and Mr. Simmons, this was shared with him as well, so that, and Dr. Warren, so we had everybody in the loop on being transparent even on the leadership side here. So they got some initial information on a Monday, which was more monetary items, a workbook file through an email. I held some allotment information until about Thursday or Friday that week because we were still analyzing that data. And when I say analyzing, you've got somebody like me following traditional processes and trying to still think about other ways of doing business, but trying to respect the process in this school district because that's what everybody knows. And in any year we need some normalcy, this would be the year. So we haven't tried to sway or move around the process. That would be something that Mr. Simmons would, or I would recommend to him, and he recommend to y'all if we ever want to do that. So anyway, they received information, and then Dr. Taylor, Ms. Dobbins already had a pre-established job fair. And I want to say Stephanie told me that thing was last summer lined up for February that weekend. So the timing of that, I can understand where that would be subject to looking at a couple of different ways, but in respect and being credible to share the information, good or bad, transparent, that is what happened. But on the flip side of that, we have sent detailed information to principals, which is these 2 things I was just telling you. I have had multiple phone calls and put myself out there to talk to anybody at any time. A couple of them that were here tonight have talked to me after hours about some of the stuff. Follow-up emails, a Google meeting attended by all administrative staff last Tuesday. I think it was 87 people on that email. That was assistant principals, all leadership in here. Mr. Simmons attended, Dr. Warren, everybody, where I gave a presentation on that as well. We also know that we have some CARES Act 2 funding that you all are aware of. I believe $14.6 million. I had to take a double take because that seems, that's an astronomical amount of money, which gives you and the superintendent discretion on how to spend that. So we're looking at uses of funds that we'll have to get approval from DOE on how to allocate those monies. And one of those allocations is maintaining operations, which you may suggest that we do that. That's still trying to play out. And then budget meeting plans, we have already a budget meeting calendar I believe it runs through April 1, where the schools have signed up. We gave them 3 weeks. And this is a traditional format, but I gave them an additional week to plan. So those are already locked in from somewhere around March 12th forward. So speaking to the turnover and the retention piece from earlier, you know, y'all know where I've been in the past. I'm used to 125 teachers leaving a district for whatever reason, retirement stuff, spouses moving, better job offer. Maybe they don't like it here, maybe they do like it here, and that's why we want to try to retain people. That's what we've been talking about. But I think even when I was in the other district, we were benchmarking against Griffin-Spalding. Griffin-Spalding was one of the 10 folks that we were looking at, because we were within 1,000 FTE of this school district. And I think I have talked to Ms. Dobbins and Dr. Taylor, and I want to say, like you said, there's a ballpark number of about 100, 125. I'm talking certified teachers only right now, not custodians and other people. So I guess when I'm looking at it from pool, and I'm not looking at the uses of the pool, that's what we were talking about tonight. I'm talking about, is there any risk on hiring folks that maybe have filled out an intent letter and changed their mind later? You know, generally that comes in at 100 or so. So when we were talking about that earlier, hiring people or not, and again, this is maybe some direction we'll need from Mr. Simmons. There may be some misunderstanding of that, of whether it's okay to hire or if they're held to an allotment or what we're going to do with the CARES fund. All that still has to play out. If it's just a flat out people are leaving, then we're going to have a certain amount of people leave anyway. Am I saying that right, Dr. Taylor? We're going to have a certain amount of turnover regardless. It could be reduced in a COVID environment, because there may not be that, or, you know. Well, from the specific question of a restoration of allotment, I don't know that we're prepared to make that statement yet. I mean, that's something that maybe March 1st we can have a little bit further. And I'm looking for the superintendent to lead on that, to bring that to the board. You know, I can recommend all day long, and that doesn't mean that doesn't mean I'm supported. I mean, I'm recommending authority, and I recognize that. But all I'm trying to say is we're in a good position to where we have discretionary funds that the board can have a recommendation presented to them. And you know, and we recognize that the board could support it or not support it. I mean, I'm just being open about it. So we want to bring something that's going to be supported, and we do realize that the clock's ticking. That you know, but it's all well intended, I guess is what I'm trying to say to you, from an open bringing this up standpoint. Recognize.
Sure. Just have a comment. Knowing what every school system in America has gone through, I just can't. I don't rest well at night knowing that a school might lose 3 teachers because of allotment numbers brought down from the state. Because with what our teachers have been through, with what our students have been through, with gaps that we have to close. I hope we don't lose anyone, and I don't think it's fair to our students if we do. I don't think it's fair to any principal in any building if they do, because of what we're continuing to live through. And you know, if we're all about the kids, and if we're all about teachers, and you know, for me it's teachers, parents, kids, and employees, then I just hope that we can keep who we have and we don't lose anyone, because I think we need them. Period. Based on what we've all lived through in the last year. If we're about kids and teachers and parents and students, then I can't see losing anyone, and I just wanted to publicly say that.
Well, and I would say, and I agree with what you're saying. Losing anyone, and I'm a numbers guy. I'm not focusing so much on human body versus position, because when we go back to human bodies have already turned in an X amount that are not coming back. So there would be a choice to restore something, hire a new body, which gets into the retention and recruiting piece. So, depending on how that's said, I guess, is what we're talking about. All we did was communicate out what some state preliminary data says, and we hope that our families of Griffin-Spalding and any surrounding community that chooses to come here, we want them to come back. And so we want to set up, in that presentation that I gave on Thursday, I wrote down there failed to plan or plan to fail. We don't want to do either one of them. So that's what I'm telling you, bringing it up from a budget person. There's a lot of variables to consider, and we would beg for everyone's patience for just a little bit longer.
Because I'm sure that based on the state figures and the allotments, blah, 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 we can use those bodies somewhere in a building to close gaps and to help our children get to the level they deserve to be at. And I'm totally against cutting anyone from any building. And I'm very emphatic, and they got a lot of work to do, and we got to help them do the hard work.
Well, I'll continue to share the data with you. Again, recognizing come March 1st, we'll have you a recommendation sometime after that. And, the data is what it is. I hope that all of the families come back. I hope that we go from 9,300 students, is what our FTE sheet said last Thursday. It's dropped 450. So, that's $2.something million.
Before you leave,
The
Mr. Jones.
the good thing is that we've got a reserve. There's been some good planning here in this district in the past, and we will continue to plan and be on the cutting edge of that. It's just, we may have to have some innovative ways on how to do things in the future, which would close gaps.
Before you leave, for Mr. Jones and Dr. Taylor and then in Ms. Dobbins' absence, I'm just zoned in on turnover and retention. That if you talk to any manager that worked in healthcare up under Tenet Healthcare, AMI, over the names, that was a hotbed issue. We used to have a phrase when it came to turnover and retention and things that we really will focus on. When you heard the phrase, let's do a deep dive, that was a pucker phrase, you understand what I mean. And that means, we need to do a deep dive, drill down to see why. And I'm just sharing what I've seen here versus what I've seen in other arenas. I think that we need to do more of a deep dive in turnover to see why. Because I think the attitude has been in the education system is we're gonna lose people every year. No, we don't have to lose those amount of people. There's gonna be a certain segment who are gonna chase the dollar, who are gonna fall in the category of moving closer to home, relocating. But I want to say this to maybe change the mindset of how we look at turnover and retention. We need to do a deep dive to understand why people are leaving, and if we can prevent it, like I heard Dr. Taylor say, and I was glad to hear her say that phrase, when we have star employees, we need to find out why they're choosing to leave. And I tell you, Miss McDonald was, and I know where she was going, when you have 4 and 5 year employees and all of a sudden they just leave, that's when we should do a deep dive to find out if there's something that we can do to keep that star employee here. But I haven't seen that in the system since I've been around. If someone wants to leave, we're like, okay, well, they're gone. No, sometimes you have to do a deep dive and do maybe something simple to keep a star employee or a valuable employee. Not saying that they're not all valuable, but there are some that you just want to keep on your team. You know, Tampa Bay wasn't going to let Tom Brady leave. Look what Tom Brady did for them. You know, when you got an employee like that can bring something to the table, you need to try to keep him on your team. And I don't think we've drilled down and valued doing that little extra to keep those star employees that we've lost. So I understand that we're going to lose employees for those intangible things that we see, but there are some, and the study shows now, it's not money at the top of the list. Money is actually third or fourth. The most reason why employees leave a job, do you know what it is? Because of how they're treated. That's the number one reason that employees leave jobs, is because of how they're treated. And that can be how they're responded to, verbally talked to. And one thing that I've learned is it's not hard to make people feel valuable. People just want to feel like they're valued. And so I hope that we get that sense of urgency about turnover and recruitment, and not just settle for we're going to lose these amount of people every year because of what we've seen in the past. They're going to move. No, they don't always have to leave for those reasons. We can do some of that deep dive and find out what the root cause is for them leaving. So I just had to put that out because that was a passion of mine. And you know, I prided myself on having one of the lowest turnover rates in not just in the facility but in the company, because I know that's my gift. Everybody got a gift. My gift is people skills, just dealing with people, and sometimes it just takes showing a concern or knowing something about an employee, what they're going through. You'll be surprised how people will respond to you knowing that they have a family of these kids and this and that, or they're taking care of their elderly, stuff like that, and you asking them how's it going on a regular basis or whatever. That kind of stuff make them feel good. Hey, they really concerned about me. So let's not accept that they're going to automatically leave every year like we've seen. We can do something about it. So I just wanted to put that out there, you know, doing this conversation, because we don't have to settle for that, and we need to stop settling for people going to automatically leave, because we can't affect that. We can't affect that.
This goes along with the conversation Dr. Taylor and I had this morning. We sat in on I guess it's an annual assessment for our benefit plan. And I know she's probably laughing under that mask, because I was bringing up all kind of stuff that I know can be implemented maybe here that we've not thought about, just only because I've been somewhere else.
Right.
And we start opening the discussion up, and for cents on the dollar, I mean, we could be offering, I mean, just increase in life insurance policy, which would matter to somebody we know it would matter to somebody.
Right.
That's real to people. But when we start looking at our marketing area in RISA, you know, we've got something, you know, not everybody offers $5 on the dental plan. That may seem insignificant, but when you start adding up, you start comparing what you do or what we kick in as a employer expense. I mean, Griffin-Spalding really got a good benefit. We need to probably put that out there, and we started brainstorming on that a little bit this morning. So anyway, I'll wrap all that up. I opened that box up
that was all right.
Proactively, just to acknowledge with you all that we know we've sent out data, and we are going to be devising a plan, and we want to do everything we can. We hope all the families and children come back.
Yes.
I mean, and I know everybody in the state basically struggling with the same thing. And so just to repeat, we tried to do everything we can to keep transmission of data and timelines of what all of our people who have been embedded in this process for years are used to getting. You may see a tweak to that in the future. You may see some tweaks short term once we can meet a couple more times, but
Right.
anyway.
Thank you,
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Board members, this is our time for any board members that have any comment, and I start over here to my left with Mr. Doss, and we'll work our way around to Mr. Brown.
None at this time, thank you, sir.
None? Okay. Ms. McDonald? Go ahead.
Personally, I know that, Dr. Warren, this is your last official board meeting before Mr. Simmons takes over, and I just personally wanted and publicly say thank you for the job you have done, which has been stellar.
Can we just give him a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And also, so thank you, Dr. Warren. You've been awesome, just tremendously awesome, and I appreciate your effort, and your communication skills are stellar, and it's just been a really pleasant experience these 3 months, I think. I also wanted to publicly say how sorry I am about Coach Pickney, and I wanted to let his family know, if they're listening, that you all are in my thoughts and prayers, because I know he was Mr. Holmes and I spoke earlier in the week and was telling me some stories about Coach Pickney when he was at Carver Road and working his way up to the high school, and you know, I just wanted his family to know that they're in my thoughts and prayers. And I hope that we're ready to go back to school on Monday. And I was just curious, Dr. Warren, are the numbers pretty much the same as the number in the surveys that we sent out months ago that are going to return, or? And that's really all I have. Just kind of wanted an update.
At the high school level, we had about 50% split remote in building. At the middle school level, that was about 68% in building, and the other 32% remote. And Dr. Sauce, what were the elementary numbers?
70-something.
Yes.
Okay.
We are working with parents to let them have that first week, next week, March 1st to the 5th. They want to make a change. So we're working with families. They want to go from remote to in person to remote. We're working with them,
Great.
as we did last time.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you so much, Leader Holmes. Just wanted to say, for about 2 years now, we've been talking about an employee assistance program. And I was just thinking how we've spent a lot of focus on social and emotional learning for our scholars. But what are we doing for the social emotional preparation and everything else for our scholars? About 3 weeks ago, I was checking my email. One of the companies I consult for, the CEO sent out a message saying that any employee within the company or consultants will be entitled to 5 free sessions of, therapy or mental health. And I'm just thinking, what is our school district doing to prepare our teachers? I know some are still a little antsy and edgy about returning. And so if the district has not thought about that, I think that it would be in our best interest to reach out to some of the mental health providers in our community. Dr. Dunn Tyus is one, Dr. Bolton and a couple others, to offer if they would be willing to sit down and schedule different sessions with our employees, just so that we can make sure that their minds are right. Because we can't expect them to come and stand before our scholars every day and give 110%, and they're not there mentally. They may be there in body, in person, but mentally not there to be able to go forth and teach our scholars. So as the District 1 representative, that is something that I would like to put out there, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about it, but it's something that I would like to put out there for us to work into our employee assistance, that we are able to help our employees mentally so that they can physically do the job of teaching our scholars.
Totally
no further
support it.
comments, Mr.
Totally
Chair.
support it.
Yeah, I'm all on board with that. That's a great comment and great analogy of our situation. So thank you for bringing
I
that.
think there's some discussion that they're in the back. Dr. Taylor? Yeah, I can hear you. I'm familiar with the employee assistance program. It was one of the things like 2 years ago when I joined the board, is one of the things making it known to our employees. And so it has been known, and I know that we do have an employee assistance program, but I don't think that was part of the program.
Free sessions.
It is? Okay. Please. Absolutely. I think that our teachers would definitely benefit from that. And I've shared with some of my employees on the board, you know, when scrolling through social media and then seeing a lot of their concerns on social media, whether if it's Twitter or Facebook, and it just prevents a grave concern to me to just make sure that they are where they need to be mentally and physically. So if we could get that information to them, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I know, you just need to be reminded of the benefits you have.
Right, right,
It
that-
could
yeah.
be just that simple, because
That-
I know I probably didn't know all the benefits I had when I was working, so.
That's
Correct.
what I was going to suggest, Ms. McDonough. If Dr. Warren or Mr. Simmons would get with HR, Mr. Adam.
Adam could
let-
do another video.
Yeah, we do, let's do some kind of communication to our employees to remind them, like Sue says, you know,
Right.
sometimes we forget what we have available to us.
Yeah. As an example, when we sent out messages to our employees to Spalding and Griffin High Schools yesterday evening, and all district employees today, we include attachments and links to our employee assistance program.
Okay.
It's very
We
impressive.
included that.
But I think we need to, you know, because I know for a fact, you know, a lot of people are not going to admit or
Yes.
mention that they need that
Correct.
support, mental support. So let's just remind them that that's available, put it out there, and, you know, all of it is confidential. You know, they don't have to tell, but let's remind them that it's available for them. You did? Great. Great.
Yeah.
Yes. Great. That's great. That's great.
Thank you.
My remarks, I'm going to focus on what I shared with Ms. McDonald about Coach Pinckney. Dr. Taylor, when she was principal at Carver Road, Carver Road has been a great school, one of great schools that have allowed me to personally come in, and Dr. Taylor would allow me to come to the school and do certain things, help Dr. Gardner when he was there with the mentoring program for the young kids. But one thing that drew my attention to Coach Pinckney was when he was coaching the boys basketball team. And I think they actually won the championship that year, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Taylor. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, this is the kind of person that Bart Pinckney was. I was there. I went to a basketball game. I think the girls were playing. I think the girls actually won the championship that year. But anyway, Coach Pinckney, you know, the boys basketball team was sitting in the stands waiting for their game to start afterward. But this was, I never seen a high school team or any middle school team do what I saw Coach Pinckney had done with those scholars, those athletes. But Coach Pinckney had set a standard for those kids. They had to wear khaki pants. They had to wear white long sleeve shirts. And he had blue sweater vests, the sleeveless sweater vest with the Carver Road emblem on the chest, and they all had on ties. And they were sitting in the stands. They wasn't jawing like, you expect kids to be doing while the other team is playing and they're getting ready to play. They were sitting there in the stands, attentive to the game, and they were just being respectful. If they talked, they kept it to a low whisper to the person right next to them. And that was when my relationship started with Coach Pinckney. And I'm like, who has these kids dressed like this and conducting themselves like this? Who does that anymore? And I went over to just tell him how impressive that was. And Coach Pinckney said that, Mr. Holmes, that's the standard that we have here. This is how we do things here. And from that day on, I've just always held Coach Pinckney in the highest regards because he really showed his concern for his students and athletes, to go and take it to that level. So I just wanted to share that because some people know of Coach Pinckney, but they don't know Coach Pinckney. But that was the kind of person he was, and I'm just like Miss McDonald. I'm just real. I'm just kind of saddened that his life was cut short, and that family have to deal with his loss. So let us just keep his family in our prayers, because I know this is going to be a tough one for them. So, but thank God that I made a relationship, a friendship with Coach Pinckney. Do we have one item for executive session?
I would like to say a couple words, Mr.
Pardon me?
I would like to say a couple words.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
I'm sorry, Doc.
That's
But
good.
mine, I was gone then. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, related to Mr. Pinckney, I recall our meeting during my first year working in district. He was teaching at Spalding High School. Went to a classroom, was teaching Algebra 1, and had total control of the content as well as the students. He was very impressive. He even named one of our star teachers a couple of years ago. But most importantly, he had a big heart for kids and people. And he and I would even tease each other about our fraternities. I'm an Alpha and he's an Omega, so we pick at each other. But he was.
I don't want to say that, Doc.
Yes,
but
sir. But he was a loving husband and father, and obviously meant so much to so many people. And just want to say, may God bless and strengthen the Pinckney family, as well as the GSCS family. And in terms of my tenure as interim superintendent, it's been a great learning and growth opportunity for me to have served. I appreciate the trust and confidence that you all have bestowed upon me. Our board has been outstanding to work for, and you guys have provided clear guidance and support to me in these uncertain times. And one thing I say about you all, you always keep the main focus on the students, and that's very appreciative. I want to thank our cabinet, our administrators, and all of our employees, teachers, classified, certified staff for fulfilling their daily roles to make our school district a truly great place to both work and learn. We got some great things going on here in Griffin, Georgia. And we're all excited to pass on to Mr. Simmons come next Monday. Bright and early, be looking for you at 7:30 stand-up, sir. All right. Thank you.
I appreciate that. You heard the time, right, Mr. Simmons? Bright and early, 7:30. Y'all have fun. We do have one item for executive session for benefit of evaluation of personnel. And we thank y'all for tuning in and being here. And, may God bless our efforts from this day forward. We stand adjourned.